Today, I present you with some great news for the MAGA right. Thom Tillis has officially basically announced his retirement. He's not going to run in 2026 for Senate in North Carolina. Now, let's see what his release was. So I'll read this and give you the golden nuggets because obviously there's a lot of stuff that nobody cares about. Okay, so right now, if you look right here, it says in Washington over the last few years, it's become increasingly evident that leaders who are willing to embrace bipartisanship, compromise, and demonstrate independent thinking are becoming an endangered species. So again, off his high horse or on his high horse, being a complete D-bag, saying basically people like me that are great, that are bipartisan, that by the way, voted with Joe Biden 40% of the time, are becoming an endangered species, sounding a lot like John McCain there, bud. Some glazing of the Democratic Party. Won't be surprised if he's on an NGO funded by Democrats soon. Now, look at this. Democrats recently have lost two such leaders in the Senate who are trying to make it a more functional and productive legislative body. They were shunned after being courageously refusing to cave to their party bosses to nuke the filibuster. They ultimately retired, and their presence in the Senate chamber has been sorely missed ever since. Not by me, not by many, and he's in the minority, hence why he dropped out. Okay, now here is the actual precise cope, okay? Rail it like a line of cope. Now watch this. Watch this. As many of my colleagues have noticed over the last year, and at times even joked about, I haven't exactly been excited about running for another term. This is the truth, since the choice is between spending another 6 years navigating the political theater and partisan gridlock in Washington, or spending that time with the love of my life, Susan, whipped, or two children, three beautiful grandchildren, and the rest of our extended family back home. It's not a hard choice and will not be seeking re-election. Now, he's lying. Why do I know he's lying? Why didn't you announce your retirement months ago, even years ago? You don't have to hold off on the retirement thing until the day after you win the election. After that, you could say, well, this is my final term. 6 years from now, I'll be gone. Why not? Why not? This guy's 65. He could run. He could retire. It's that gray area in age. The thing with me is that, again, he's just saving face. He's saying that bipartisan people are an endangered species, which is stupid because to be bipartisan implies that you're working with multiple sides, meaning that you have support around a large swath of the population. Yet a person like this still can't win, at least in his own estimate. My theory is that he thought he couldn't win the primary and or the general election in 26, and he's right about that. But what he's wrong about is lying about it in this letter. Now, here's the scary part for us. I still look forward to continuing to serve North Carolina over the next 18 months. I look forward to solely focusing on producing meaningful results without the distraction of raising money or campaigning for another election. I look forward to having the pure freedom to call the balls and strikes as I see fit, red flag, and representing the great people of North Carolina to the best of my ability. So, to call balls and strikes means you're going to play it in the middle like a referee. Now, you were elected mainly to support President Trump's agenda. So when you're calling balls and strikes, what you're implying, Thom, is that you're going to be playing and straddling the middle, which you were not elected for. That's a ripoff, okay? People voted for Thom Tillis with the impression that he's going to vote somewhere between 80 and 100% with Donald Trump. If he ends up doing maybe 60% like a whipped little slave, call it Lisa Murkowskiism, it's going to look really bad because that's a misrepresentation as a candidate or a politician over what you were elected for, okay? It's called a mandate, but a mandate to do what exactly? Not to call balls and strikes. You're fighting for your own side. When do the Democrats call balls and strikes? Fetterman, maybe? Calls balls and strikes. He looks like he got struck by a ball 50 times over. That aside. All right, so this was President Trump's Truth Social. I think it was less than like six of them that ended the guy's career, Tom's that is. He says here, Thom Tillis has hurt the great people of North Carolina. Even on the catastrophic flooding, nothing was done to help until I took office. Then a miracle took place. Tillis is a talker and a complainer, not a doer. He's even worse than Rand, end quote, Fauci, end quote, Paul. Okay, yikes, Rand. Catching strays like usual. Plenty of subject material there, huh? Anyway, so not a doer. I mean, he is doing something by retiring from the race. Anyway, now y'all may be asking, well, he was an incumbent with name recognition. Maybe this isn't such a great thing because for a new Republican to step in there and go against maybe a guy like Roy Cooper, it could be a bad look. Now, just to preface this, Roy Cooper is someone who has been a governor for, I think, 2 terms and has done great electorally, has surpassed most other Democrats in the state, is a strong candidate by all means. North Carolina, swing state, good old state, southern state. This guy's like a mid-60s white dude. Phenotypically matches the description of what you need to win, moderates and suburbanites. Now, to prove the point, in 2020, Thom Tillis last ran for Senate against Cal Cunningham, who towards the tail end of the campaign, had a affair scandal, okay, that docked him a couple points. Now, if you see here, Thom Tillis won over Cal Cunningham by about 1.8%, so like 2%, we'll call it there. Now, the thing is about this is that when you look at Governor Roy Cooper, he beats Dan Forrest by about 4.5%. Okay, so even if you look at the raw votes, which would be 2.8 million for Roy Cooper, you look at Thom Tillis, who also won, and he only got 2.66 million. Okay, so my point being is that Governor Cooper is a strong candidate by all means. In fact, Governor Cooper defeated Mark Robinson by a lot. By a lot. It looks like you starved Mark Robinson a week before the election because he got devastated. In fact, I think he lost by like 15. Okay, so Mark Robinson, the Republican for governor, lost by double digits against Roy Cooper. By the way, Donald Trump won North Carolina by what was it? 3, 4, 5 percentage points. And so he is very formidable. That being said, we do have like a half dozen people that could potentially run. So the most popular one is going to be Lara Trump, who's married to Eric Trump, who I think is like the third child of Trump, the blonde one. Anyway, Lara apparently was, I think, a co-chair of the RNC recently, so she has some experience in that realm. Obviously, with the Trump family, some experience there. However, no political elected office by far, which is not a good thing, typically. However, if you look at this poll, apparently it says that Lara Trump is ahead of Roy Cooper by 5%, so 50 to 45%, 5% undecided, presumably. Lara Trump against Wiley Nickel, who is another Democrat, not as strong as obviously Roy Cooper, but Roy Cooper hasn't thrown his hat in the race yet, technically, so they're doing polling for other folks. And Wiley Nickel, the Democrat, is losing 44 to 52 from Lara. So apparently the polling looks strong. I don't really believe it. And again, this is very preliminary because Lara Trump was actually rumored to take over the Senate spot vacated by, I believe, Rubio at the beginning of the administration months ago, and DeSantis ended up picking like some girl that was nothing having to do with Trump. So it'd be a bad look if you're in the primary in North Carolina running against North Carolinians, and you have Lara Trump, who was just trying to see if she could get the Senate appointment in Florida, now then running in North Carolina when there's another opening. It seems like carpetbagging, which a lot of Americans have a problem with. If you saw the debates against Fetterman, or rather with Fetterman against Mehmet Oz, you'd see that got brought up a lot because apparently Oz lived in Jersey, as if I give a crap. But anyway, a lot of people do apparently. So that could be a weakness. On top of that, the connection to Trump is a double-edged sword. If Trump's approval is positive, then that's a good thing for Lara. If it's not, then it's definitely not. And the problem with people that are associated with Trump is that a lot of them fall into the trap of sycophancy by perception. And by that I mean that a lot of people do what Trump tells them to do, will try to emulate him, but are not as charismatic, are not the president himself, do not have the aura, and they look like posers. So, for example, Kari Lake had the MAGA coalition, but nobody else. What you need to do in a swing state is have the MAGA voters plus the moderates. And so can Lara do that? I don't know enough about her to prove that to be the case. So as a candidate, I'd give her a 5 out of 10 because it's a very unproven commodity. She is a very unproven person in this realm. Now, with the other candidates, in theory, you could run Mark Robinson. Please, God help us, do not do that. He got his ass kicked. And don't look into his adult content stuff because it's rough. Anyways, disclaimer aside, you also have people like Dan Bishop, who I believe is a congressman, solid guy, could win. But what I'm asking for is a Ted Budd to run in this race. Of course, he already took Richard Burr's spot a couple years ago, and he's a MAGA candidate. But what I'm saying is that I need a guy who is resolutely MAGA, a little more articulate, and by articulate, I mean a little more politically correct, and clean-cut, no scandals. Give me a 58-year-old white guy, 6 foot tall, and let's insert him into the race, and Roy Cooper will have a run for his money. 2026, you don't know how it's going to break out. Obviously, first midterms in a presidential term tend to be pretty awful for the incumbent party. So 2026 might not be the year for Republicans. That being said, the Senate's different from the House, and you never know how the cookie's going to crumble, how Trump's going to handle the myriad of different things going on. It's really a mosaic of problems, whether it be the Middle East, the economy, again, inflation, crime, etc. So we don't know. Anyways, that's just the update out of North Carolina. Sorry, Thom Tillis, you got to go. You're fired. Anyways, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to keep watching content like this. And also, comment down below what your thoughts are, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Adios.